Okay, so today is day 2 of chapter 6, section 3. So we'll finish up the notes. Yesterday we saw the unit circle. We again reviewed the 6 trig ratios. Again, we simplified sine and cosine. Sine is just y, cosine is x. So this is some examples that we did. This would be a non-calculator section where you just are using your unit circle. Then we did the calculator questions. Remember, whenever you're trying to find the value of a trig function, you put it in as it's given. Okay, if it's a reciprocal, you're going to enter it as a reciprocal. But if it's a negative angle that they're giving you, you're entering it in as a negative angle. It's only when we're looking for theta, which is what we're going to cover today, that you're not going to enter it into your calculator as a negative number. So here are the rules for finding the angles. If you remember, in quadrant 1, this is where our reference angle is located. Now, before, we always would refer to the angle using the variable theta. Now, when we're talking radians, a lot of times they're going to use the variable s. So instead of theta, sometimes they refer to the angle measure as an s. And then in quadrant 2, when we want to find that angle measure, before when we worked in degrees, we did 180 minus the reference angle. What we're going to do today is we're going to do 3.14 minus the reference angle. So we're going to approximate pi. So really what we're doing is pi minus the reference angle. So if you get a question like this on an SAT, they may expect you to use your pi button. But what we're going to do is we'll just use 3.14. And then in quadrant 2, that was the formula, 3.14 minus the reference angle. In quadrant 3, to find the angle measure, we're going to do 3.14 plus the reference angle. Or in other words, pi plus the reference angle that you get from quadrant 1. And then in quadrant 4, this 6.28 is really 2 pi minus the reference angle. So if you do 3.14 times 2, that's how you get the 6.28 that they have there listed. So you're going to take 2 pi and subtract the reference angle. But when we do these notes, we're just going to use 3.14 and 6.28. We're not going to use our pi button. So let's go ahead and do some examples with the calculator first. Again, remember your calculator must be in radians, and a way to check it is to do tangent of 45. If you get 1, you're still in degrees. Change it back to radians, and you should be getting 1.6 something. So when they're asking us to find the angle measure, and again, they're going to use some type of variable. A lot of times when they're doing radians, they're using an s. When we did degrees, we used theta. And notice the interval is only from 0 to 2 pi, or in other words, from about 0 to 6 radians. So that's what 2 pi is. So all of our answers are in radians. First one, it's asking us to find cosine. So what we're going to do is, remember, whenever you're looking for an angle measure, this is where we're going to do inverse. So what we're going to do is cosine, you're going to hit second and then the cosine button, and it should open up cosine negative 1. Then you're going to put in 0.9685. You're going to hit enter, and you're going to round it to the nearest hundred, which is 2 decimal places. So it's going to be 0.25. Now remember, the answer we're getting is our reference angle from quadrant number 1. But what we need to do is figure out what other quadrant cosine is positive in. And this is where we do our all students take calculus. Cosine is positive in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 4. So 0.25 is one of my answers. My other answer I'm going to take that 0.25, and I'm going to take 2 pi, so 6.28, and subtract the 0.25, and my other angle measure in radians is 6.03. So the two answers to this question are the 0.25 and 6.03. So this is about 1/4 of a radian and a little bit over 6 radians, where cosine is going to be equal to 0.9685. So the next one is still cosine. And again, I'm doing my all students take calculus. So we already know that it's positive in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 4. So to get the reference angle from quadrant 1, I'm doing inverse. So cosine -1, 0.7826, hit enter, rounded to the hundredths place, 0.67. This is your reference angle from quadrant 1. And in this particular case, it's one of the answers because cosine is positive in quadrant 1. Now to get the second answer for quadrant number 4, we take 2 pi, so 6.28, and we're going to subtract 0.67. Once we do that subtraction, we get 5.61. So the other angle measure is 5.61. So S is equal to 5.61 and 0.67. So these are your two answers, one from quadrant 1, one from quadrant 4. Now number 18, there is no cotangent button, so this is where we need to do the reciprocal. So what we're going to do here, if you want to first do your all students take calculus, all students take calculus. We know cotangent is positive in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 3. So I'm going to get my reference angle from quadrant 1 first. Remember, we're looking for, so we can use tangent of S is equal to 1 over cotangent of S. But when we do this on our calculator, we're doing tangent -1 and then the 1 divided by 0.2994. There is no tan in that denominator. You hit the second key or the shift key, then tan, then the 1 divided by. This will give you your reference angle from quadrant 1, and this gives me 1.28, a little bit over 1 radian. So this is my reference angle from quadrant 1. And now to find quadrant 3, I'm going to do pi 3.14 plus that reference angle of 1.28. And once I add those two, I get 4.42. So my two answers to this problem are going to be 4.42 and 1.28. Quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. For number 19, it's also a reciprocal. Cosecant is the reciprocal to sine. So cosecant of S is equal to 1 over sine, or let's do that. Let's do it that way. So what we're going to do here is sine of S, and then highlight sine of S is equal to 1 over cosecant. So this would be 1 over, and there's 2 decimal points. Get rid of one of them. It's a typo. I only want the 1.0219. So the way I'm going to do this is second and then sine. So it opens up sine -1. And then I do 1 divided by 1.0219. And then once I hit enter, I'm going to get 1.36. So again, I still need to do my all students take calculus. And I know that sine is positive here and here. So then now what I need to do is for quadrant 2, it's 180, it's not 180, it's pi, so 3.14 minus the 1.36. And once I do that subtraction, I'm going to get 1.78. So my two answers are going to be 1.36 and 1.78. Now remember, whenever this answer is positive, your reference angle is always going to be one of the answers. But if the answer that you're working with is negative, that reference angle is not going to be one of the answers. But you need it to find the other two answers. Now for number 20, I know I wrote all over the place, but this one's no reciprocal here. It's just plain old sine, but it's negative. We need to enter it in our calculator as positive. So I'm going to be hitting the shift key, so sine -1, and then I'm going to put in positive 0.3425, because if I put it in as negative, I will not get my quadrant 1 reference angle. Once I do this, I get 0.35. This is my quadrant 1 reference angle. Now, this is not one of my answers because I need to do my all students take calculus. I need to figure out where sine is negative, and sine is negative here and here. So I needed that reference angle to do 3.14 plus 0.35, and then 2 pi, 6.28, minus 0.35. So my two answers to this problem are 3.49 and 5.93. So those would be my two angles using the reference angle that I got from my calculator. All right, let me go ahead and I'm going to add in a unit circle. That's going to be a clue that you're looking for an ordered pair where both the x and the y are the same number. So here, my x and my y are both square root 2 over 2. So this is going to be the ordered pair that when I divide y by x, I get a 1 for the answer. So this is what you're doing. You're going to take those ratios and you're going to figure out which one will give you those answers. So if I do square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2, I get 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. So that's why my reference angle was the pi over 4. And then I had to do my all students take calculus. And my other angle in quadrant number 3, I look for the same denominator. And it had a denominator of 4. So the other angle is 5 pi over 4. Let's try another example. So again, this one, all we had to do was either memorize that the tangent of 45 equals 1, and then you're going to become familiar with the 45 degrees in radians is pi over 4. And then that's how you could have gotten that reference angle from quadrant 1. Now for number 22, it's cosine. Cosine, what we're looking for is an x value. Cosine looks at x. So what I'm going to do is, to narrow down my search, I'm going to do my all students take calculus. I want to figure out what quadrant cosine is negative in. And cosine is negative in quadrant 2 and 3. And then what I'm going to do is go and look at all my ordered pairs until I find one ordered pair where the x equals -1/2. I don't have to look at the whole circle. I'm only looking in quadrant 2 and 3. Once I find one of them, I'm just going to look for the same denominator. So let's zoom into the unit circle. We're looking at the ordered pairs. I want to find the ordered pair where x equals 1/2. And it's right here. It's going to be the 2 pi over 3. Remember, sine is also cosine is also negative down in quadrant 3. So notice the denominator of 3. So my other angle with the denominator of 3 from quadrant 3 is 4 pi over 3. So the answer to this one is going to be 2 pi over 3 and 4 pi over 3 because cosine is negative in quadrant 3 and 4. Let's try example 22 or 23. Now we're looking for sine to be equal to negative half. Remember sine? We're looking at the y. Let's narrow down our search. All students take calculus. Sine will be negative in quadrant 3 and in quadrant 4. So I'm looking in those two quadrants until I have an ordered pair where the y of the ordered pair is equal to negative half. Let me come to my circle. And I can find y equal to negative 1/2 is located right here. So my angle is 7 pi over 6. My other quadrant is quadrant 4. I'm looking for a denominator 6. So it's the 11 pi over 6. So now all I have to do is my two answers for 23 are going to be 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. Cosine. Cosine looks at x. All students take calculus. I am looking where cosine is positive. It's positive here in quadrant 1 and in 4. I'm looking for an ordered pair that has square root of 3 over 2 as the x of the ordered pair. So let me zoom into my unit circle. And I can see that the square root of 3 over 2 in the x spot in quadrant 1 is going to be pi over 6. And then in quadrant 4, it's the 11 pi over 6. Once you find one of the angles, then just look for the same denominator in the other quadrant where it's either positive or negative, whatever you're looking for. So the answer to 24, this one is going to be pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. I've had in the past, so when you're using the unit circle, when you're looking for sine and cosine, or even their reciprocals, it's easy. You're just looking for that number in the ordered pair. But when they ask you, and this is a typo here, this should have been cotangent. What you're doing for tangent is you have to divide them. Now, as far as the tangent of 1, so if you take y divided by x, and if you take each one of these three ordered pairs and you already divide the y by x ahead of time, then when you go to search for something, it'll make it a lot easier. So my advice to you is, in addition to memorizing all these coordinates and all the degrees and the radian measures, also take the time to do pi over 6 and go ahead and find the tangent of it. Because if I ask you to do tangent of pi over 6, what you're doing here is y divided by x. So if you do this ahead of time, because it's going to be the same three numbers repeated all throughout the unit circle. So y divided by x is 1/2 divided by square root 3 over 2. Keep, change, flip it. And then you get 1 over the square root of 3. And then once you rationalize it, the tangent of pi over 6 is root 3 over 3. So if you want to memorize this tangent value for pi over 6 is root 3 over 3. We've already seen the tangent of pi over 4 because it's root 2 divided by root 2, and this tangent value is 1. Then if you do the same thing for the tangent of pi over 3, y divided by x, so root 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. Keep change, flip it. And then the 2's cancel, and you're just left with √3/1, which is √3. So the tangent here is √3. So for example, let's say now I said find theta or find s when tangent equals the square root of 3. So what you can do now is, since you've already figured this out, you already know your reference angle is the pi/3. So then you just do your all students take calculus, and then tangent's positive here and here. And then all you got to do is find the other denominator of a 3. And this answer is pi/3 and 4pi/3. So if you also want to, in addition to memorizing the coordinates and the radian measures and the degree measures, also memorize the value of tangent so you don't have to divide it each time. It'll save time. You don't have to, but if you don't, you have to divide y by x so you can find your reference angle. So let's say, also remember what happens here is this one is negative square root 3. This one's -1, and this one's negative square root 3. These are all your tangent values that I've already figured out. Then down here, same thing. In this quadrant, tangent's positive. So it's going to be, this is √3/3. √3/3, this will be +1. This will just be √3. Then over here, negative √3, -1, negative √3/3. So it saves a little bit of time because it's the same 3 repeated. Cosine, or cotangent, you would flip it. I wanted you to find the sine of pi/6. So the ordered pair associated with pi/6 is √3/2, 1/2. What does sine look at? Y, right? So then the answer to this is 1/2. If I said find cosecant of pi/6, remember this is where you're going to flip it, and it's 1/y. So then you would take the 1/2, flip it, and from there you would flip it to 2/1. Take 1/1/2, and then keep change, flip it, and it's 2/1. Or if you already know that the sine of pi/6, and then it's just a reciprocal, just flip it. So when they give you the angle measure, you just grab that ordered pair, and then if it's sine, you look at y. If it's cosine, you look at x. If it's tangent, you got to divide it. But if you've already divided it ahead of time, it's either going to be square root 3, 1, or square root 3/3. Now,